Welcome to At the Core, the intersection between neuroscience and fitness, where I have the opportunity to speak to amazing high performance movers. And with these conversations, we are able to shed light on where neuroscience applies into creating better movement and hopefully trickling that down to helping each of you. Today's special guest is Leslie St. John. As the creator of Prose and Poses, Leslie blends the power of yoga, writing, and the free dance expression of Qoya to help others heal, grow, and thrive. The combination of external movement and internal wisdom help people unshackle their creativity, feel their bodies as allies, and cultivate more self-intimacy. Leslie's journey started at the age of 17 after a traumatic injury caused her to lose her eye. She now lives with a piece of art in her body, and she's transformed the original wound into a source of depth and beauty she shares in her teaching. With her MFA from Purdue University, she's a poet and writing coach. Her words are published in over 20 wellness and poetic journals. In her career as an English professor at California Polytechnic University, she helps her students tap into the wisdom of words. Leslie, welcome. We are so happy to have you here today.
Happy to be here. Thank you, Misha.
So I'm going to get into the movement, the music and movement. It courses through your veins. Music has the ability to evoke powerful emotional responses in most of us, from suspense to happiness, whether it be through movement or movies. But music can also stir up old memories without the intention of doing so, bring back old emotions that were experienced at a certain time, shaping how we feel in the present from experiences we've had in the past. And in the neuroscience world, we often talk about the fact that music taps into many parts of the brain. And with the combination of movement, lights up nearly every part of the brain.
Oh, I feel the truth of that.
And so with these fireworks that take place in this like grand finale of the brain, how do you use music? How do you tap into brain and body and alter emotional states?
Oh, I love this question. And I was thinking about when did my relationship with music begin to kind of come to being? And it was probably when I was young. I mean, I was a dancer when I was very young. I can remember my father picking me up in his Arkansas Game and Fish commission vehicle and us listening to classical radio and just sort of finger dancing ballets and imagining when they would leap and turn. And so even at a very young age, I had this kind of association with music. And then as a figure skater, music became the score to the choreography, to the jumps, to the spins. And then that continued with dance. Music became a way to express what is inside on the outside. And also, I think as a singer, I was briefly a singer in a background in my church. And I really loved those moments where we would sort of step off of the set list and kind of have these improvisational singing and music moments. And that's really where you're kind of tapping into the pulse of life, something larger than your own individual experience. And music is a really beautiful avenue to make that possible. Now I use music almost like a dance partner, a collaborator, a co-creator. So the practice that I teach is called Qoya, Qoya, and it's a feminine movement practice that helps us remember our essence is that we are wise, wild, and free. And this is such a fabulous practice because I get to use music to help evoke slowing down in order to feel more like circling through the body, or using music to help start to open the heart and really tap into that rhythm, that beat of the music where your whole body becomes a speaker, or using music to kind of get into the more sensual, pleasurable aspects of moving our hips, or even exploring some of the more challenging aspects of our experience. I call this the shadow. I don't. Rochelle, the creator of Qoya, calls this the shadow contrast dance. And this is really where we explore the opposite of our theme. So if our theme was wise, when are those moments in your life when you have forgotten your wisdom, right? Or you didn't act from your wisdom, and kind of feeling into that and letting it just be a part of your experience, a part of your wholeness. And then following that with this beautiful practice of shaking. And I love using drums, right? This very earthy and rhythmic music to help us access that shaking. So I think
Let's
music is a collaborator.
let's talk about shaking for a second.
Okay.
So, as part of the healing process, and we're going to get into that a little bit, but
Mhm.
part of the healing process, you talk about acknowledging the shadows of our
Mhm.
past and then
Mhm.
dealing with shaking it off. So,
Mhm.
first of all, let's talk about acknowledging those shadows in those past. Why is it important in the first
Mm.
place to go there? How, in what ways may we go there in doing
Mhm.
this?
Well, I think they're always there, whether they're conscious or unconscious. And when they're unconscious, they sort of act out in kind of our default mechanisms or even in these self sabotaging ways. I mean, I think we've maybe experienced that. And so, looking at our shadow, whether that's in a therapy session or in your journaling or in the container of one song in a Qoya class, can be a way of kind of shining the light of awareness on those more challenging aspects of our experience or our personality, and seeing what wisdom it wants to show us, or at least making it less scary, less charged, right? And then starting to integrate it into our experience so that we remember our wholeness, right? We are all these things. And I think it just has a less of a grip in your life once you're able to do that.
I completely agree. It's not this scary approach of something you're not willing to understand or
Mhm.
partner with, even at times, as you talk about music and looking
Mhm.
at shadows. So let's talk about shaking.
Okay.
I've I've experienced it. It's literal shaking it off, right? Getting
Yeah.
the drip of water off our body. How does shaking one's limb change our physiology?
Well, I want to reference, you might know this writer is a neurobiologist called Robert Sapolsky, and he wrote a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, which is a fabulous title. And it's just, the reason being that zebras and other animals know how to dissipate stress by shaking. They go and they just, in their own innate animal wisdom, begin to shake through the entire body. I mean, you see this even with dogs, they just sort of shimmy
Mhm.
head to tail. And in doing so, they kind of release the dense energy of whatever experience was maybe challenging or not pleasurable or even scary or dangerous. Maybe keep the wisdom of that, but let go and dissipate the charge of it. And so, it's something we say all the time in our culture, just shake it off, just shake it out, right? But it actually has incredible wisdom. And it does allow us to kind of shift our shape in a way that may help us shift our state and our experience.
Absolutely. So let's talk about, if you're willing to, a
Mhm.
little bit about fears and growing from traumatic experiences. No matter how small they are to somebody else or big they are in
Mhm.
our life changing forms, we've all had different traumatic experiences, different things that we are scared of or that we want to reapproach or afraid to approach. Would you mind sharing your story of your trauma experience as a teenager and how that you've managed to now flourish as the woman despite all those challenges and experience the light of it?
Yeah. My first thought was, "Which one?" No. You mean my eye injury, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So, when I was 17, I was at a Christian music festival outside of Bushnell, Illinois, called Cornerstone, and it was the 4th of July, and there were probably about 30,000 people at this festival, sleeping in tents and car camping, and we were at a ska show, Five Iron Frenzy, and they were throwing out beach balls, T-shirts, food, and CDs. It was the 90s. They were tossing them like frisbees, and a CD struck my eye, and I passed out right away, fell down. My friend woke me up and helped me up and helped carry me through the bodies and the tent ropes and the maze of cars to the first aid trailer. And the medic there just sort of lifted my lid and said, "Okay, we need to get her to the ER." So I took a very bumpy van ride for about 2.5 hours to Chicago on the 4th of July at 2:30 a.m. There happened to be an eye specialist there in the hospital on call. And he did what should have been about a 2-hour procedure. It was 4.5 hours, and I had 42 stitches in my eye. The next morning, I woke up And I remember doing this, and it kind of looked like moths to a light, like I could see the shadows. And then that was really probably the last time I saw anything out of my right eye. Over the next 6 months, I had multiple other surgeries. It was my senior year of high school. I wore a patch to school. I really wish I could have just rocked it, but I was 17, a girl in the South. I had all these insecurities, but I was on the homecoming court in a sequin dress and an eye patch. So that's a cool moment to think about.
I love that.
Um, but I think that the main things that kind of helped me through that experience were community support and music. There was a lot of music in my life at the time, and I had a strong faith that I could grow from this and that I could cultivate resilience. And, it really served me well in that acute moment of the trauma.
Mm.
Later on in my life, as my faith and communities changed quite a lot, I tapped into different resources, a way of healing what was physically a loss and a story that wasn't my truth, mainly being that I was unlovable, I was broken. Who could love something this broken? I remember a line from Leonard Cohen that says, "The cracks are where the light gets in," right? And I think I started to really soften into that. Our vulnerabilities are what make us beautiful. The way we are able to tap into our resilience gives other people permission to as well. We're all here helping each other journey home in some ways. And so those are essential parts of my healing journey. Lots of poetry, um, very helpful therapy, including EMDR, and lots of my own writing and creative expression. Expression through dance, expression through poetry, expression through voice.
So,
So that's a little bit of the journey, and really also working specifically with changing that narrative. I used to feel like this was evidence of my brokenness, or the word that was always so charged for me was freak, right? And I now see this as a piece of art in my body, and how rare and beautiful is that? And so I'm stepping into that identity as someone who has art in her body that has a rare beauty.
I think that's really amazing that you are able to not only deal with the trauma, but come out of it stronger and be able to help others.
Mhm.
So as we talk about this, we talk about the neural hierarchy on this podcast all the time, talking about the vision system, the vestibular system, the proprioceptive system,
Mm.
and how important they are. And I'm not even going to get into that would be a whole nother topic to talk about all of those things with having lost vision in one eye.
Mhm. Mhm.
But there's one that we don't talk about, which is intuition,
Mm.
listening to that intuition.
Mhm.
Scientists have repeatedly demonstrated how information can register on the brain without conscious awareness and positively influence decision making and our behavior now and in the future
Mm.
through this aspect of what we consider intuition.
Mhm.
How does one hone their skills in learning to listen and trust that
Mm.
intuition?
Well, I think it's one of the most important things that we can do in this life, especially those of us that have a feminine essence. We all have, masculine and feminine energies within us. But the feminine is really where we can tap into the feeling of truth in our bodies. And, maybe we've never accessed that, and it takes something like a yoga class or a Qoya class or a guided meditation to start to access that. And then once you do, it's like this sort of superpower that you can lean on a little bit more. Like you have that gut reaction, like, no, this situation is not safe. Or I don't know why, but I know I need to go to France this summer. And then when you follow that to see, yes, I can protect and take care of myself, or yes, I am opening myself to up to greater expansion. Like the more you practice and you build that muscle of intuition, the stronger it gets. And I think it brings more magic into this world. That does
Mhm.
not mean we don't use our beautiful, intelligent, brilliant minds. I think it just means we use all of our faculties of understanding, but we don't negate intuition or the physical sensation of truth in our bodies. When I allow my mind to be a servant to the wisdom of my heart, things usually work out better for me.
Absolutely. My mom would always say, when your heart and your mind agree, you will be in balance.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. I mean, it's a practice daily.
Well, and I also think that a lot of people don't listen to the basics of intuition. I mean,
Mhm.
intuition is as simple as your stomach grumbles and did you listen to the fact,
Yeah,
or if you just take 1 second to just say, what is my body telling me? And it says, I'm thirsty. Do you go and give yourself water?
yeah.
Or you try to ignore it or say, well, I don't have time to get water right now, right? Like
Mhm.
it can start with these very small things and become a practice. And I think that that's important for people to know. It's not just some people have good intuition and some people don't.
Mhm.
Like anything else, it's listening, it's hearing,
Mhm.
cultivating a relationship with it.
And I think we live in a culture that doesn't want us to do that because it wants us to buy and consume and buy and consume and buy and consume. And so if we have all these voices, talking at us, our own voice kind of comes into the background and we lose it. And so we have to continue to cultivate those practices that allow us to hear our intuition and our inner wisdom. And I think this is where writing is really helpful. Even if it's, journaling your gratitudes or journaling your joy. Look around your space right now and see 3 objects that bring you joy and journal about, why does this bring you joy? Who does it make you think of? Where were you traveling when you found this object? And suddenly your whole energy, chemistry shifts, right? To be in that resonance of joy as opposed to, I don't know, looking at an unfinished to-do list or something like that.
I
So,
love that. And from a cognitive point of view, when it comes to writing,
mhm,
it has this incredible benefit of cognitive processing and decision making capabilities. It
mhm,
writing down your thoughts forces you to articulate them in a different medium, right?
mhm, mhm,
Movement is one medium, writing is one medium, just thinking it inside or speaking it to somebody,
mhm,
right? Your work is often coupled with
mhm,
journaling.
mhm.
And you gave some examples of list 3 things that bring you joy as you look around right this second, or one
Mhm,
thing that brought you gratitude today, or
mhm.
how should one go about starting a practice of journaling or creating prompts for them to go
Yeah.
about?
Start with a journal and a pen. It can be that simple. But a great prompt to begin, and this is also a lovely mindfulness exercise that you can do when you're hiking or something, is to just write down the page 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and write 5 things that you see right here in the moment, 4 things that you hear from the farthest sound away to the nearest sound of your heart or your breath, 3 things that you maybe smell, 2 things that you feel like physical touch, 1 thing that you can taste. You might have to use your imagination a little bit. But doing that exercise, allows you to kind of get a little more dexterous with your writing, right? It opens you up to sensory, rich, and descriptive language. But it also is a wonderful way to kind of go and bring you into the present moment where you're practicing mindfulness of your experience and orienting yourself into the space, which can also like lower threat levels in the brain and make you feel safer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
that's a good first practice.
Well, and you talk about lowering threat levels in the brain. One of the things we often talk about in the brain is that prediction, understanding where we are, how we feel in that moment. And doing something like that, you are literally using all of your senses
Hmm.
to understand where you are and how you feel about it and what you're seeing and hearing and feeling. And how does your brain and body not know what that
Mhm.
is then, right? It is very predictable and it immediately lowers those threats. As far as writing experience goes from you and movement, do you put them together? How do you put them together?
Well, I always kind of felt like these 2 worlds were different. I have been writing since I was a kid, like writing poems and putting them on the back of my father's door at the Game and Fish. But then I studied English and honors English in high school and college and grad school. And so there was like the academic life, that was the literary life. And then there was, oh, I was a figure skater. I was a modern dancer. I'm a yogi. And then this more movement life. And I remember driving home from Big Sur with a friend of mine, kind of feeling which way should I go? Which way should I lean more? And he said, why not combine them? And there's something about that Big Sur coastline with the vast ocean, the beautiful sky, where suddenly there are infinite possibilities, right? And I was like, well, why not? You know,
Exactly what you're talking
and, and so I started experimenting with, you know, how would this feel to do them together? And sometimes I would journal first and then move my body because I'm a mover and it's hard to sit still for that long. You know, get off of the computer and do 10 minutes of movement and then come back to your writing. But then
about.
I also started noticing more when I move my body, it opens up kind of the creative channels in yoga. We call this like the nadis, where the energy can flow more freely. And so suddenly, when I would sit back down to write, I could more easily drop into a flow state. And, you know, I think the writing was better because it came from a more authentic place when I'm writing from that moment. So,
Right.
you know, a full yoga practice, excellent. Even if it's just put one song on, circle through the body, and then sit down and write for 15 minutes, that is helpful as well. So the idea is that the movement opens up these creative channels that allows you to access your writing more easily.
That's really wonderful.
It
Les,
is.
yeah, we've learned so much, and I think that so many people listening to this have ways of applying what we've talked about. We have
Mm.
a fun little lightning round that
Oh
we like,
goodness. Okay.
and it's just the first thing that comes to mind. It's really easy. There's no right or wrong answers. And as you guys are listening to this and have heard Leslie speak for the past half hour, see if you can guess what her answers might be. It's kind of fun. So, Leslie, working out morning, afternoon, or night?
Afternoon or night.
Sweet or salty?
Both.
Planks or squats?
Planks.
Shoes or barefoot?
Barefoot.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee. Multiple.
Beach or mountains?
Oh, both. Beach.
Music or silence?
Both. Music.
Heat or cold?
Heat.
Inside or outside?
Inside.
Jasmine or peppermint?
Jasmine.
Spontaneous or planned?
Spontaneous.
Learn something new or perfect something known?
Oh, that's hard. Learn something new and then perfect it, and then let it go and do something else.
I love it. Thank you so much, Leslie. This was a great privilege to chat with you. We covered lots and yet just touched the surface.
Aw.
Is there anything the listeners here that we missed that you find important to let them know about?
Well, I would encourage you to explore this relationship between movement and writing yourself. And this writing is just a way for you to listen to your inner voice of truth because there are so many forces out there vying for you to not do that. So it's a source of empowerment. And if you want to take that a step further and join me for some workshops or retreats, I teach those. You can visit my website. Retreats here on the Central Coast are at Sagrada Wellness, and I also teach retreats at different locations around the world in Mexico, Switzerland, Italy, and hopefully we're going to France in 2024. So it's a wonderful way to take a deeper dive if you're interested in this work.
That's amazing. And Leslie, we'll make sure we attach everything to the account so that they can reach you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to speak with me. And for those of you listening, rhythm, music, and movement can take you to some deep places of healing and reflection.
Mm.
It is not a space crowded by words or overshadowed by our thinking world. I hope each listener today took away valuable information of how, through movement and writing, you can unshackle creativity, feel your body as an ally, and cultivate self-love. See you again soon on At the Core.